Okay, boys and girls, men and women, there are some teachers that might be present. Oh, Carolyn. Hi, Carolyn. Okay, so I am going to be continuing on with the fantastic Mr. Fox, which Mr. Devon started reading. Hello, Sayul. So Mr. Devon started reading this for us, and he did an excellent job, and I'm going to continue on with chapters 4 and 5. So just let me set up my screen so that I can read the book as well as see what you guys are saying, which is great. Oh, Miss Kanako's here too. Awesome. Okay, so yesterday in chapters 1, 2, and 3, yes, I can see the chat. Thank you, Miss Kanako. Oh, hi, James. So yesterday in chapters 1, 2, and 3, the not silly, but the farmers were trying to catch the fox because the fox is obviously eating a lot of their stuff and being a little bit of a nuisance, which means the fox is being kind of annoying. So Bogus and Bunce and Bean, that is not Bean from grade 4, that is a Bean in the book. So Bogus and Bunce and Bean are trying to catch the fox. I did cut my hair, Sayul. Thank you for noticing. It's much shorter now. Oh, hey, Lance. Okay, so let's get started with chapter 4. So chapter 4 is called The Terrible Shovels. So down the hole, Mrs. Fox was tenderly licking the stump of Mr. Fox's tail to stop the bleeding. It was the finest tail for miles around, she said between licks. It hurts, said Mr. Fox. I know it does, sweetheart, but it'll soon get better. And it will soon grow again, Dad, said one of the small foxes. It will never grow again, said Mr. Fox. I shall be tailless for the rest of my life. He looked very glum. There was no food for the foxes that night, and soon the children dozed off. Then Mrs. Fox dozed off, but Mr. Fox couldn't sleep because of the pain in the stump of his tail. Well, he thought, I suppose I'm lucky to be alive at all. And now they've found our hole. We're going to have to move out as soon as possible. We'll never get any peace if we... What was that? He turned his head sharply and listened. The noise he heard now was the most frightening noise a fox can ever hear. The scrape, scrape, scraping of shovels digging into the soil. Wake up, he shouted. They're digging us out. Mrs. Fox was wide awake in 1 second. She sat up, quivering all over. Are you sure that's it? She whispered. I'm positive. Listen. They'll kill my children, cried Mrs. Fox. Never, said Mr. Fox. But darling, they will, sobbed Mrs. Fox. You know they will. Scrunch, scrunch, scrunch went the shovels above their heads. Small stones and bits of earth began falling from the roof of the tunnel. How will they kill us, Mommy? Asked one of the small foxes. His round black eyes were huge with fright. Will there be dogs? He said. Mrs. Fox began to cry. She gathered her 4 children close to her and held them tight. Suddenly, there was an especially loud crunch above their heads, and the sharp end of a shovel came right through the ceiling. The sight of this awful thing seemed to have an electric effect upon Mr. Fox. He jumped up and shouted, I've got it! Come on! There's not a moment to lose! Why didn't I think of it before? Think of what, Dad? A fox can dig quicker than a man, shouted Mr. Fox, beginning to dig. Nobody in the world can dig as quick as a fox. The soil began to fly out furiously behind Mr. Fox as he started to dig for dear life with his front feet. Mrs. Fox ran forward to help him. So did the 4 children. Go downwards, ordered Mr. Fox. We've got to go deep, as deep as we possibly can. The tunnel began to grow longer and longer. It sloped steeply downward. Deeper and deeper below the surface of the ground it went. The mother and father and all 4 of the children were digging together. Their front legs were moving so fast you couldn't even see them. And gradually the scrunching and scraping of the shovels became fainter and fainter. After an hour, Mr. Fox stopped digging. "Hold it," he said. They all stopped. They turned and looked back up the long tunnel they had just dug. All was quiet. "Phew," said Mr. Fox. "I think we've done it. They'll never get as deep as this. Well done, everyone." They all sat down, panting for breath. And Mrs. Fox said to her children, "I should like you to know that if it wasn't for your father, we should all be dead by now. Your father is a fantastic fox." Mr. Fox looked at his wife and she smiled. He loved her more than ever when she said things like that. Before I begin chapter 5, I just want to take a look and see if anybody has any questions or comments. Okay, Lance is here. Nice to see you, Lance. And Tom, good to see you, Tom. And what does faint mean? Oh, good question. So there's 2 meanings for the word faint. If somebody faints, then that means they maybe get dizzy because it's so hot, or they haven't drank water and so they faint. The other word is fainter. So the noise, when the noise gets fainter, it means that the noise gets more. Oh, thank you, Carolyn. Yeah, you pass out when you faint. That's another word for that. But the word fainter, as in the noise is getting fainter, it means that it's getting less and less, and you can't hear it as well. So if somebody's walking away from you as they're talking, their voice would actually get fainter and fainter because they'd be moving further away from you, so you wouldn't hear them as well as they start to move away. Okay, good question. Good question. Hello, Tom. Yeah, like cannot hear. That's good. Okay, so chapter number 5, the terrible tractors. And I think everybody knows what a tractor is. That's like a big yellow truck that we use for construction to carry things or to dig things up. Okay, moving away, quieter. Yeah, James, good word. So fainter or quieter. That's a good word, James. Thank you. Okay, so chapter 5, the terrible tractors. And this is not a construction site, okay? So as the sun rose the next morning, Bogus and Bunce and Bean were still digging. They had dug a hole so deep you could have put a house into it. But they had not yet come to the end of the fox's tunnel. They were all very tired and cross. So cross means kind of annoyed or upset about something. "Dang and blast," said Bogus. "Whose rotten idea was this?" "Bean's idea," said Bunce. Bogus and Bunce both stared at Bean. Bean took another swig of cider. Cider is like apple juice. Then put the flask back into his pocket without offering it to the others. Well, it's actually apple juice mixed with some liquor. But anyway. "Listen," he said angrily. "I want that fox. I'm going to get that fox. I'm not giving in until I've strung him up from my front porch, dead as a dumpling." "We can't get him by digging, that's for sure," said the fat Bogus. "I've had enough of digging." Bunce, the little pot-bellied dwarf, looked up at Bean and said, "Have you got any more stupid ideas then?" "What?" said Bean. "I can't hear you." Bean never took a bath. He never even washed. As a result, his ear holes were clogged with all kinds of muck and wax and bits of chewing gum and dead flies and stuff like that. This made him almost deaf. "Speak louder," he said to Bunce, and Bunce shouted back, "Got any more stupid ideas?" Bean rubbed the back of his neck with a dirty finger. He had a boil coming there and it itched. So a boil is like a little growth on your neck, a little piece of skin that's kind of infected. What we need on this job, he said, is machines, mechanical shovels. We'll have him out in 5 minutes with mechanical shovels. This was a pretty good idea, and the other two had to admit it. All right then, Bean said, taking charge. Bogus, you stay here and see the fox doesn't escape. Bunce and I will go and fetch our machinery. If he tries to get out, shoot him quick. The long, thin Bean walked away. The tiny Bunce trotted after him. The fat Bogus stayed where he was with his gun pointing at the foxhole. Soon, 2 enormous Caterpillar tractors. So Caterpillar is the name of the company that makes tractors. Soon, 2 enormous Caterpillar tractors with mechanical shovels on their front ends came clanking into the wood. Bean was driving one, Bunce the other. The machines were both black. Usually they're yellow, but in this book they're black. The machines were both black. They were murderous, brutal-looking monsters. Here we go then, shouted Bean. Death to the fox, shouted Bunce. The machines went to work, biting huge mouthfuls of soil out of the hill. The big tree under which Mr. Fox had dug his hole in the first place was toppled like a matchstick. On all sides, rocks were sent flying and trees were falling, and the noise was deafening. Deafening, that's another good word. So deafening is when it's really loud and you feel like you're gonna go deaf because it's so loud and it hurts your ears. Down in the tunnel, the foxes crouched, listening to the terrible clanging and banging overhead. What's happening, Dad? Cried the small foxes. What are they doing? Mr. Fox didn't know what was happening or what they were doing. It's an earthquake, cried Mrs. Fox. Look, said one of the small foxes, our tunnels got shorter. I can see daylight. They all looked around, and yes, the mouth of the tunnel was only a few feet away from them now. How in the circle of in the circle of daylight beyond, they could see the 2 huge black tractors almost on top of them. Tractors, shouted Mr. Fox, and mechanical shovels. Dig for your lives. Dig, dig, dig. And that is the end of chapter 5. You're going to have to tune in tomorrow for chapter number 6 with Mr. Devon. I'll give you the name of the chapter. It is The Race. The Race, chapter 6. Does anybody have any questions or concerns before I get off the channel here? This story has a lot of digging. This story does have a lot of digging because apparently, according to Mr. Fox, foxes are the fastest diggers in the world. I wonder if anybody could check that fact. Maybe you could check Google for what animal is the fastest digger in the world. I don't know the answer to that. I would guess that it's a mole, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is a fox. All right. Anybody else? Aardvark. Interesting. But yeah, I'd love to hear that tomorrow. I'll be on the chat, and Mr. Devon will be reading, and I'd like to know if anybody checks to see who's the best digger in the world. All right, thank you very much, girls and boys, women and men. You guys have a great Tuesday. And, Carolyn doesn't want to go there. Well, Carolyn, I'm sure there's some chats going on that you can jump into. All right, you guys have a great day. Okay, bye.